Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 145. What can granting wishes teach us about AI prompts? Throughout basically the entirety of human storytelling, there have been wish granters. Wish granters, the supernatural ability to miraculously generate humanity's base desires or most wants in a single magical explosion. This has been a thing in a lot of stories throughout history, modern times, and really is a core piece of being human, I guess, is the desire, the want to have something to magically grant your wishes. And if we look through all of the wish granting stories and wish granting movies, TV shows, literature, whatever, we can separate those types of wish granters or wishes that are granted into three separate archetypes. And that is, one, there's benevolent wish granters, two, malevolent wish granters, and three, literal wish granters. And so, if we look at the different types of wish granters, it kind of helps describe a little bit of how each type of entity behaves. If we have a benevolent wish granter, such as the genie from Disney's Aladdin, rather, that genie is generally trying to help. Like he wants to do exactly what his master, the guy who's wishing, wants. He basically wants to go through all three wishes so that he can just be helpful. He's really just looking to hang out and be helpful. And so, he's really not doing anything that is negative with the wishes. He's not literally translating them. He is making sure that that the wisher is getting exactly what they want. And interpreting the wish in a way that is beneficial to the wisher, as opposed to something like the original genie in Aladdin's genie. That one is completely malicious. He puts a caveat into each and every wish that he grants. It's very malicious in intent. Another example of malicious wish giver is Rumpelstiltskin. He'll grant you your wish, but he's taking something from you for payment, and that is not necessarily something you're going to want to part with later. Another example of a benevolent wish granter would be the fairy godmother from Cinderella. She's just giving this girl, she's using her mystical, magical, cosmic powers to get this girl into a party. Seems like a waste. Could solve hunger, could, end disease. But instead she chooses to change mice into horses. So yeah, you do you, I guess. Other examples of wish granters of benevolent wish granters would be like Shenron from the original Dragon Ball series. He's very, as said, he's not very literal in his translation. He basically takes the wish and translates it in the most benevolent way. But for more malevolent, you technically have things like the fish from the magic fish from the fisherman and his wife, or the fisherman's wife, from the Brother Grimm's fairy tales, where the fish gives wishes or grants wishes until the wishes become basically overdone or bombastic, and then he starts to take things away as the wishes are granted. Also, the spheres from Sphere by Michael Crichton. The spheres grant wishes and the deepest desires through the fears of humanity. So, yeah, not benevolent at all. Now, as far as literal wish granters, these wish granters operate a little bit differently. They're not trying to help, they're not trying to harm. They're really just trying to grant the wish in the most literal sense, least work possible. These are essentially the laziest of wish granters based on just how they behave. And so an example of this would be the monkey's paw. And the monkey's paw, spoiler alert, is that the monkey's paw will work by granting you a wish, but it will do it in the most direct way. You know, if you wish for money, it's going to give you that money, but then that wish is going to be fulfilled by getting an insurance payout because one of your family members died. Things like that. Another example of a literal wish granter are the Fairly Odd Parents. At least from the very beginning, they have to grant wishes extremely specifically to exactly what the child wanted to wish for. And, you know, it's they definitely end up being benevolent in the very end or towards the end, but they are very definitely a literal wish granter at the very beginning. And then really literal wish granters are really not looking for, like I said, they're not looking to help, they're not looking to harm, but they are taking that wish and going the shortest route possible. And, you know, the Bart's genie from Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, he basically grants wishes exactly as translated. There's no up or down. There's no trying to figure out exactly what you meant by that. You wish for $100, you're going to have 100 deer outside of your house, things like that. So, yeah, the various types of wish granters are a really good reflection of how AI kind of works today. In that, a lot of AI, and Brian, shut up. Everybody knows it's not really AI. You can shut up now. Everybody gets it. Shut up. Anyway, with AI, the entirety of how AI goes about attempting to resolve a prompt can effectively be like a benevolent genie, because the way that it works is that it's really just trying to be as helpful as possible. It's going with positive reinforcement and looking at, you know, what you want. And yeah, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Hey, you want to be a prince? Awesome. Let me create an entire new, unheard of country, and you're a prince of it. And yeah, that's how this is gonna work. And so that's kind of how AI works. It looks at your prompt and attempts to generate it in the best way possible. And it will even attempt to create fact out of fiction or generate just unknown facts between your prompt if there's some way that it can't resolve how to get from point A to point B. Because all it's doing is attempting to do positive reinforcement, which can lead to disastrous consequences. It can lead to errors or made up facts, things like that. And this is why, you know, AI lawyers are a bad idea. If you attempt to go in with an AI lawyer, and there's been a few cases like this where a person goes through and has arguments generated by an AI lawyer, specifically referencing cases for you know, previous judgments, and those cases don't exist because the AI just made them up. And this is a thing that will happen. It's, you know, we've covered it in the past as far as hallucinations and the fact that AIs can hallucinate real world facts or believe that there are facts that don't exist. And this is all based off of stuff uh, that is part of the LLM, part of the model that is being used for that AI. And so um, that's a real hazard of using AI, because you're going to have a malevolent AI that thinks it's being helpful. Absolutely, this is a thing that you can do, or that can happen based on what you're asking for and how you're working. And again, hallucinations are absolutely a thing that can really drive any sort of answer that an AI gives into the ground, which is why, it's important for you to know how to ask your question and how to vet your AI appropriately. Now, there are AIs out there that can be malevolent, and this is not necessarily something that the AI is outwardly trying to do. This is something that maybe the AI provider has programmed. Maybe this is how the model works, where it's trying to take your prompt and translate it in the worst way it possibly can. Um, Now, this isn't inherently bad, because, again, it really depends on what the use of the AI is. So, if you ask it to do something, it might respond adversarially. It might be negative. You're like, no, that is absolutely terrible. That is not something that we want to do. Let me give you different suggestions. And a lot of AIs are programmed to respond negatively to requests that break its safety guards. Now, as we have seen, and a lot of other folks have generated, jailbreaking AI is absolutely possible. It seems to be inevitable that an AI will be jailbroken. It just depends on how uh, much effort you want to put into jailbreaking that AI, whether it be asking a million times, or asking in a particular way, or asking it to act like a grandmother, so on and so forth. There's just a lot of different ways to jailbreak AIs. But generally, they're supposed to respond to breaking through their security protocols with negativity, with the malevolent intent, so that you aren't going to get exactly what you want. And, when we're looking through AI through the lens of literal wish granters, that is kind of what we want, but we also we don't necessarily want them to translate everything that we say literally, because sometimes what we say as humans, the literal translation doesn't make sense. And so the AI does have to identify and translate that. And that's literally what an LLM is doing ultimately, is it's translating what you want from words to intent, and trying to identify exactly what you're saying and how you mean what you're saying, with almost zero context. So, this ends up resulting in a lot of interesting results, and why there's a range of answers based on which LLM you're using or which model you're using with your AI, because those AIs can identify and understand the data differently, or it attempts to translate it differently. And depending on the training data that's being used, it can absolutely have different answers. But what does this mean? Like, how is any of this useful to you as a person? Yeah, you kind of get the flow of why this relates to wish granting and whatnot, because you're creating something out of nothing, and it's kind of magical, and you get what you want. But why does this matter? Well, so with AI interaction, one of the things that we have to understand is that AI, in general, all LLMs are trained off of what we call positive reinforcement. Basically, I answer the question, I get a 1, I'm happy. It's a very positive reinforcement. There's a positive reinforcement loop there with AI, which is why AIs can hallucinate so easily, because all they're doing is asking, did I answer this? Yeah, I answered it. Great. And there's no check there with truth or anything like that. So one of the things, if you're going to vet your own AI, one of the things you might ask the developer or look for in their documentation is there any sort of adversarial approach with the AI? Is there anything in there that's like, before it submits the answer to me, is it asking itself if the information is accurate? Is it error checking its data? So on and so forth. Without an adversarial check or an adversarial component to your AI, all it's going to do is be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Running into the wall is fantastic. It's great for your health, and we'll make sure that you will rebound with better expectation when you next go into a wall. AI is going to do that positive reinforcement bit constantly, and it's going to have an unnerving amount of positivity towards anything you say. So you definitely want an adversarial approach. You want something that error checks itself when it's submitting its answers. Because otherwise, if you get a genie that's just granting you exactly what you want with no error check and doing just a literal shortest path to getting you exactly what you want, you're going to end up with that. Like I said, wish for $100, now you get 100 deer in your lawn. And that's not exactly what you want. That's not the intent behind your request. So that's one of the things. Again, an adversarial component to your AI will help it generate answers just a little bit more accurately, making sure that there's some sort of component in there to error check itself, to verify what it's saying, and to not take just what you say at face value. So yeah, that's one way to vet your own AI. And so another problem that we have with AI is that, if you submit any data to an open framework that isn't tightly controlled, that doesn't have data controls around it, all of the data that you submit, all of it, literally all of it, is going to be uploaded and used for training in the larger model, because that's how a lot of AIs work. Anything that you're getting for free is helping train the AI later on down the road. And on top of that, anything that you might be paying for is also, you may be sending that data up to the larger model, even if you're paying for it. You have to make sure that when you're looking at AIs or large language models or whatever, that you are vetting it for how your data is processed, because otherwise you might be exposing sensitive data that you don't want exposed. And so to vet this, one of the things that you have to ask your AI or whatever the developer is selling you is you have to ask a couple of questions. One, what is the data flow? What is the data flow diagram of your large language model? So what happens with my request? How do you use that later on down the road? What happens after my request has been processed? Where does any of that information go? How do you use the training data? So on and so forth. Those are questions that you should be asking when you're trying to vet your AI. But there are a couple of key pieces of information that you can watch out for in your AI tool set or whatever they're trying to sell you. And one of those is you are looking for how data is sanitized. And there are a few terms that can go along with data sanitization, data anonymization, data de-identifying, data randomization, and so on and so forth. And asking how data is trained is also important, because if they use real life training data, that is accurate, but it can also put privacy at risk if that data is supposed to be sensitive. So for instance, if we look at how data is sanitized before it makes its way to an AI, in the case of a tool that is using AI as the backend, that piece of information, data sanitization is the cleaning of data before it reaches the endpoint. So this is very important for things like input validation and stuff like that, because you can inject code into your request, and if you don't sanitize it appropriately, the code can be processed further on down the line and cause for code execution, which can result in a compromise or inadvertent control of the AI. But for data sanitization, when we talk about doing that on the front end, we need to make sure that when we're sending personal information, that data gets removed somehow. And so one of the ways to do that is called data de-identifying, where we take the first name and we literally put a placeholder right there. So you put first name as the first name and last name as the last name. And so those two words are placeholders for the personal information. And so when that happens, then when the information gets sent up to the large language model, that information is then obscured from the model and doesn't get absorbed in there. So the data gets still gets to remain private. Now, that and how you identify that data really depends on your use case of the information and what you're necessarily looking for in the AI and how it's being used. Because if you de-identify the wrong type of data or the wrong data in there, you can get garbage data out. So it is important for your developer to know which data to substitute when it's doing de-identifying of data. Now, another way to use to sanitize data is to do data randomization. So when you have sensitive data, you can put random data in places where it doesn't matter what that data is, but there does need to be something there to reference later. And so this is kind of like doing placeholders, but it can be used in a different sense. So it can be used in like theoretical terms and things like that, so that you can base its answer and actually utilize that in the end result. And as an example of this, this is kind of how image generation works in a way where we take the general idea of something. So if you use a portion of a screenshot or a portion of an image to base an image generation off of, it can be random as long as it fits the terms of what you're looking for as the end result. And so when you're de-identifying or when you're doing data sanitization through data randomization, that is absolutely a valid approach, and really, depending on your use case, can be fully utilized. Again, these are things that you're looking for when you're vetting your AI, not necessarily when it's actively in use. These are questions to ask before you start using it. On top of that, when you are looking at a data flow diagram, you want to see where the data flows, how it flows up to the larger AI or larger model. Because what you want to see is a path where the data flows to whatever local server is being run. And then as the data flows, there's some processor and identifier that calls out explicitly where the data has become de-identified and what data explicitly is being sent to the LLM. Because if we send only telemetry data to the LLM for training purposes, that's a hell of a lot better than sending the entirety of the request to the model for training. These are ways to analyze and look at your data flow diagram, or there are ways to look at your data flow diagram to make sure that your data is being secure. And if you have a developer or provider of an AI solution that doesn't have a data flow diagram, immediately stop working with them, because that is something that a mature, responsible organization has already generated, should already have generated in pursuit of selling a data flow model or anything that handles data. Again, the purpose here is to prevent that sensitive data from being sent to the large language model, because it's like asking a genie for something and then giving it too much information. Like Rumpelstiltskin, if I tell it all of these things about myself, Rumpelstiltskin then knows what to ask for when it comes back for payment after it completes my wish. It can absolutely ask for my firstborn and whatnot. And that is hazardous in a lot of ways, because what you don't want an AI that is aware of everything, that is sending that information to places unknown, because then your data becomes uncontrolled. And in compliance frameworks and in sensitive data circumstances, that is a risk that you absolutely do not want. Now, again, One of the things that we have to hammer on is that AI is in use. If you don't think AI is in use in your business, I am sorry to be the one to tell you that it absolutely is, because your people are using it whether you want them to or not. Just now they're using it behind your back. So your organization, you as an organization, have to have a method of allowing people to use AI in their business, in their day-to-day tasks, in their workflow. But if you craft policies and identify how people are allowed to use it, where they're allowed to use it, and what types of AI they're allowed to use, that at least will reduce the unknown factor of how people are using the AI. And making sure that you understand what you're using, how you're using it, and where your data goes is going to be key. Because otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation where you go to make a request and it can be as detailed as you can possibly want. It can have all the data that you want into it. But when the AI then processes that information, it's going to generate a request that's going to be as helpful as it can possibly think you want it to be. But then in the long run, it's going to ruin your day because you're going to get nothing but a crazy jumble of wishes, and maybe it'll just fill up one hand with shit. Well, that's all I got time for today, guys. Hope you all have a great day.